Yeah. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm your host today on Archery Talk 101, and we have a guest with us today, and we're going to talk archery with Dave and see what's going on in his world. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Uh, Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, introduce yourself and tell us a little something about you so we can kind of get to know you a little better, and we'll go from there.
My name is David Engelsman, and I am a archer. I certainly enjoy all forms of archery. I really like ASA archery. I would say would be my favorite. Um, as far as you know, I shoot in the senior men's open class. I kind of like the judging aspect of it. I think the added difficulty and the fact that when I miss and I knew the yardage, that kind of really, you know. So I don't know. That's
Yeah.
just my personal opinion.
Well, in all the 3D shoots I went to, they were all unmarked yardages, and that's what I liked about them is weren't marked. If I want to shoot marked yardage, I'm going to shoot targets, because that's a known yardage. You had 20 yards, three or whatever it is, and uh, I figure it's going to help me in judging yardage when I'm hunting, and that's kind of what I prefer to hunt than to shoot paper, but I shoot the paper, develop skills, and do the 3D to judge yardage. And shot placement's different on a 3D target than is a real animal anyway. So that will really help with that. But I remember the first time I shot an animal, it's like I was kind of a little almost nervous, like I was shooting a real animal instead of shooting a foam target.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I couldn't wait for my first opportunity. I ended up shooting my first archery animal with during gun season. Actually, it wasn't a gun season; it was a late doe season.
Yeah.
In Colorado. It was private land only does, and I got my first compound bow from a friend that it was his roommate, and he couldn't pull the bow back. He wasn't strong enough, and he needed a shotgun, and I had a few extra shotguns, so I traded a shotgun for a compound bow. And I think that was like the start of the addiction.
Yeah.
It started long before that, like when you're a kid with your fiberglass recurve bow, shooting at squirrels and stuff like that.
Yeah, I started off with a fiberglass bow, 25-pound Ben Pearson. I put a cardboard box in it and I stuffed it full of cardboard, and that was my target.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure exactly what the brand of bow mine was, but it was an orange. I remember it was an orange fiberglass bow, and I think I had my uncle had put a piece of baling twine for the string, and he just tied a knot where the knocking point would be. Kind of rigged me up a string on it. I would have to sneak into my dad's closet where he kept all of his sporting goods, because he had back at the time I think it was a Bear bow, archery brand bow. But yeah, I can remember he had a box of cedar arrows. Some had field points and some had uh, plastic ferruled kind of razor broadheads on them. And I would sneak one or two of those arrows out of the case. But being cedar, they were pretty fragile.
Yeah.
I even took a little bit of a ass whooping from the neighbor, being a reckless kid, shooting them up in the air, and the wind drifted it over into the neighbor's yard. When I walked over to looking for my arrow, my neighbor was there with that arrow in his hand, and he didn't take too kindly to it landing in his yard, and kind of grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and gave me a couple swats on my ass with that arrow.
Last time you shot at me air like that, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I can't say I did it much more after that.
Yeah, that's up to when you're young, you don't realize, but that's very dangerous because that broadhead or that field tip coming down, if you hit you on top of the head, it's going to penetrate your skull.
Certainly,
And
sir.
and you kind of learn when you're young that that's not very good, but as we get older, we learn those things, and hopefully we grow out of that kind of nonsense. But when we're young, you know,
Yeah. I'm sure my son had been involved in several of those instances, but I'm glad he didn't share the stories with me.
oh, yeah, we'll have to get him on here and share some stories so you can hear him.
Well, I told him that he may be next coming up. We'll see how it goes. And he's
Yeah.
actually a really good archer too. I
So
can't, I
what
can't,
age did you start shooting your bow?
I said, well, I'm gonna say I was 26 when I acquired. It was I mean, it's pretty dated back. It was an XI was the brand of it. It was an XI Velocity, and at the time in 1990, I think it was late '96 when I got it. At the time, it was the fastest, most advanced bow I think on the market. And this kid who was from a better off family than me that had this bow that couldn't pull it back. Um, I was fortunate he couldn't pull it back because it was able to be set up for your draw length and that's another thing. It worked for my draw length too. And that's one of those things with older bows. They're pretty specific set. So I was
Yeah.
really fortunate to acquire this bow. And I started shooting at all the local 3D. There was an archery club not far away, and one of my friends that shot those XI bows, because there was a guy that was a local archer. His name was Steve Vidito. He was when I was say in my 20s and my mid 20s, he was probably 45 to 50 at the time, but he was sponsored by them, and that kind of intrigued me. Someone that's sponsored by an archery company. And then he switched after XI, they went out of business. Um, he switched over to Matthews. But I lived in Southwest Colorado in Durango, Colorado at the time, and PSE was the leading brand in that area because of their location in Arizona.
Yeah.
So our archery shop, we had a pro that was in there. He wasn't necessarily a pro. I mean, maybe he was. He was shooting ASA archery at the time. He was competing, and his name was Dean Brown, and he was such a phenomenal shot. Everybody just looked up to how good this guy could aim his bow, and it's like, I really like this sport, and he set me up, and I was one of those people that was really inquisitive. I couldn't just settle with, here's your bow, now go shoot it. So
Yeah.
I was constantly asking him, and hey, why is this, and how is this, and the arrow setups are what I would work on the most. And he would ask me, he's like, well, why are you so intrigued with the speed of your bow? And I was like, well, if your bow can shoot this speed, why shouldn't I? I mean, there wasn't any speed restrictions on anything at the time. And
Right.
in the 3D world, you weren't even allowed to use binoculars. They didn't even
Right.
have range finders. So the speed of your bow was really important to me because it would help me if I miscalculated on my judging a little bit. I mean, smart enough to understand the arc of the arrow.
Right.
Uh, I don't know. It just really got an interest in me. I did shoot some indoor. Um, I've mostly shot 3D archery, but indoor came around, and that guy that was sponsored in the town I lived in, he had a good friend, and they were both top of the game, and they invited me to join this archery club that shot 5-spot league. And that I was always shooting a hunting bow. And I showed up there, and these guys have long stabilizers and red bows with lightning bolts on them and blue. I was like, wow. Yeah. I couldn't, I was thinking, well, definitely not hunting with this thing, because living in Southwest Colorado, hunting it's a huge thing. And I really got into archery for hunting because my fellow workers, the guy I work with and one of my good friends, they both shot bows together. And they were elk hunting, and every year they're like, man, the elk, they're bugling, they're doing this. And I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. I've gone rifle hunting for elk before, but I've never archery hunted them. And what you're talking about sounds way more exciting than what I'd been doing with my rifle. So I just kind of worked on it and worked and just kept practicing. And it was one of those things that I figured some things out also with my sight, and it helped me. I got, at the time they had just the fiber optic. Well, I remember my first sight it was a metal brass pin with a little painted dot on the end of it. And
Yeah, I remember those. I
those
started
were
with those too.
those were a real bear to get sighted in. And when that PSE fiber optic sight came out, the local pro, I don't know, he was probably could see that I was one of those fish. If you dangle a lure in front of my face, I'm gonna take it. And he brought in these little micro target pins, and they were 10/1000s, and they were super fine brass with the little fiber optic loop on them. And I had my whole sight done with those all the way out to like 80 yards. But on that indoor, shooting against those guys with the target bows, man, my sight, it just kept right up with, and that's when limb savers came out too. It was right
Yeah,
at the era of aluminum
yeah,
arrows being your only.
limb savers.
Yeah, yeah,
For
yeah,
the
yeah.
yeah, that
I love limb
good
savers.
product.
They they're a great product. They truly work. Um, but when it was right at that time when I put those on my bow, those guys, they were like, "What are those?" I was that kid. I love to have be the first guy in the neighborhood to have it, you know. And like I said, the guy in the archery shop that I frequented, he was happy to sell it to me. So he always had stuff like that. Couldn't wait for me to come in.
Yeah, the
So,
newest gadget, and
yeah.
some things work really well. Like the limb savers. I've been using those for quite a while, and I actually some of the little bitty ones. Had a guy that did the use in martial arts. They had the sticks, and they'd fight with them. And we put one of those on the end of the stick, and it amazed how much the vibration it dampened when you smacking two sticks together. And he was amazed, like, hey, try it and see what it does, and come back and said, hey man, that really helps the vibration, because when you're hitting sticks together, you get that vibration in your hand, and it just helped.
It was at the time in this archery shop, they had it was a wooden wall that was behind like the service desk, but it was a 20-yard lane. And the top of it was open air up into basically into the archery shop. So you could hear real clearly over there. And the first time I put those, the pro had him, the dean had him on his bow, and he walked around the back and he goes, let me shoot your bow and you stand over here, and then I'll shoot my bow and you'll see the difference. And the sound difference was just incredible how it dampened. I mean, it went from a light sound of a light hand clap to the sound of someone slamming a book together in comparison, the sound difference. And after that, I was like, I'm sold. Give them to me.
Well, vibration is sound,
Yeah.
and if you can dampen the limbs, the older bows, there's a lot of forward force and a lot of movement forward. It would jump into your hand because I never hang on to it. I put a sling on there and I'd feel it jump and hit my hand. Now with the new bows, it's most of the force is going up and down, so they kind of counteract each other. But I even went as far as to put the string leeches in the string and the cables and the white cable. So I had any place I could fit one in, you'd pluck it here, put it in, and be a thud. Like the quieter I can make that bow, the better. Now it's gonna everything you put on a bow is gonna slow it down.
Yeah, that's a sure thing too.
But
All the whiskers and stuff that we used to have on our strings.
we used to take the um, material used for like bass jigs, the skirts on bass jigs. When I had my store, I just bought big rolls of multiple different colors. And so what I do is I cut them in a strip, probably about 3, 4 inches long, and I take four of them, wrap it around the string lengthwise so it went parallel to the string, and tie the center really tight, and then spread those things out and cut them, then form little balls on the strings. And we just call them poofa balls, but one of my staff shooters, he started calling them poofa balls because they kind of poof up, and we put those on when I had we saw I was a PSE dealer. So when you talk about PSE, it's like I've got a PSE recurve and I got two compounds. Um, but and all my kids shoot PSE. And it's because I was a dealer when the kids were getting equipment. And we'd take the Nova bows, which was that entry level bow. For those that don't know, it was just
Oh,
your basic bow. There wasn't fancy machining on it. It was machined, but it wasn't machined really smooth. You get a nice shiny surface. Um, they come in a kit with a quiver, a sight, a rest. Some would come with a sling and a stabilizer. And then while they stopped the stabilizer, so I'd just get those little inexpensive $10. That time there's only like $10. This was 20 years ago, and I put a sling on it, and I give you half dozen arrows with points on it, and then I'd give you one of the cheap, Patriot type releases that are then was selling for like $20 at that time. They were low end ones. They weren't very good. I'd put all that kit together, and we'd always take when we get them in, you'd pull them back and you hear the little creaking sound. They never lubricated the pockets good enough. So when we get them in, we'd pull them out, lubricate the pockets, put the little poofa balls on there, and get it all set up. Get the hobo all set up, ready to go. Just had to pull it back and shoot it. And I wanted to have something that nobody could price compare with. So
was that
I
before the Whisker Biscuit? Was that around still TM Hunter time?
Yeah, they still had those, but it come with just a little two-prong rest is what it came with. And I wasn't going to change them out. If they wanted something different, they could buy something different. But then also give you a shooting instruction with it. And that's why nobody could price compare against my bows. I even had one guy bought one and said, think I could put it, you could bolt them up. But if it's not right, I'm going to charge you $40 to put it on there and $100 an hour for a shooting instruction. But that's all included if you buy one from me. He took it back and bought my bow. It's that extra service over just getting the bow and have them set up where they're really good. That's the key to starting out is get the equipment set up for you and have somebody teach you how to shoot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is the key for sure. We live personally, we live in a small town in central Kansas. So it's a long travel for us to get to even the nearest city, I guess, it would be a small city, is Salina, Kansas. And it doesn't have an archery shop. The archery shop from there is another 25 or 30 minutes away. So that's a total of about an hour and 15 minutes from us to go just to go to the archery shop. So we had to kind of just do this out of necessity. We had to get our own stuff and just start working on our own bows. And my son, he's 30 years old, and he's a little more adventurous, where I was more reliant on the bow tech at the bow shop because I'm one of the guys that I believe, if you need electrical work done at your house, you call an electrician. If
Yeah,
you need mechanics done on your car, that's, something more than doing oil and a few bolt-on parts, you should use a mechanic. Stay in your lane. And archery, I wasn't I always kind of, like I said, I relied on my local bow tech for a long time because it was one of those things where I could know that he had my bow set up real good. So everything after this, it's going to be on me. The bow
right,
was, when he handed it to me, there was nothing wrong with it. It was perfectly tuned. Now it's me. And now that I do my own bow mechanicking and build my own arrows, and you know, there there's always that aspect in there. Is it some of the work I did? Is it me? What's not right now? I mean, you got to start analyzing. You got to be your own kind of psychologist, and archery is definitely a mental game. And I'll be the first to admit sometimes I don't have the strongest mental game. If I just make a poor shot, just a total error, get relaxed in your back wall and kind of slip, and punched it. You're like, oh my gosh.
yeah.
And, that can just turn my game around. I was born in New Jersey, and there's just something about it's like in your DNA. And actually, I don't know if that's really because I was in New Jersey and I have a high percentage of Irish in me, and I think that could, contribute to my lack of focus sometimes if I make a poor shot, to say the least.
Well, and like you, I know there's several archers out there, a lot of archers out there that, they take it to a bow tech and they don't want that bow tech. I worked at I've worked at basketball and Cabela's both, as well as having my own shop. Now, I had my own shop, it wasn't no big deal because I was doing most of the bow tech work anyway. But, we had guys come in to one of the other stores and ask for me or ask for John or Steve or there's somebody there, and they were busy with somebody, and I can help you. So no, I'll wait for John, because that John was the one that did their work, and we're sitting here, we don't have the line of people because they wanted to see him, and so there's times when I wasn't there. He had a line of people waiting 3 or 4 hours for him to work on the bow because they only want him to touch the bow. And a lot of archers that way. They trust the tech, like you was just talking about, and they set it up, and you don't want to take a chance on somebody else, even though there was three others of us that were just as good. It's
Yeah,
like you get that confidence, and there's some that would come in. It's like, right, you know, okay, this is your guy. And then you get some that are kind of a pain to work with, and you've been working with them for years, and you just, that's just the way they are. We
yeah.
had one guy that no matter how it was set up to start with, you would go through all kinds of stuff because like, oh, this thing is terrible. It's terrible, terrible. And once you finally get him going on what to do with it, because it's a little bit different, then oh, it's great. And then he gets a new bow and starts all over again. It's you don't like because it's not he's not used to it, and that's something to be said about that. And
My
me
boat,
being an instructor as well as a bow tech and an archer is like, I got all this stuff running through my head. And then when I take a video of me shooting, it's like, why are you doing it that way? That's not what I told you to do. And it's I'm doing it not right. And you go back and thinking and watch your videos. And that's the hard part is stepping out, looking at a video of you shooting and really analyze it like an instructor. And I was like, okay, what am I doing wrong here and here? And once you can step into that kind of mode, then it actually makes it easier because you aren't depending on anybody else. Um, but there, if you want to step next step, or next level up, you still need a coach, even though you're a coach. You need a coach to get you better, and that's just the way it works.
I know, and my son, he works good as a coach along with me. I mean, he tells me, "Woosah, Dad, breathe, breathe, calm down." So I kind of have that little thought in the back of my head where it's like, all right, it's not that bad. You just dropped 5 points. It's over.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
now, like the targets now, when I was doing a lot of them, you know, out of the 300, 295s, you were up there, 298s, you're pretty much winning at 297, 298, 299, definitely you won. And now if you don't get 300, you're not even in the running.
I
And now
know.
it's coming down to the X count. So it's amazing how the skills have improved, as well as the training techniques too.
Yeah. I can never say that I honestly shot a 300 on a Vegas round. Uh, my highest total ever was 297. And I had 21 X's, and I have not come close. I've had a couple of 295s, 296, but to be 100% honest with that, I'm more of the 292 to 294, right around in there is my average. And my that's where my mental game right there, it can go right in the toilet real quick after, you know,
Yeah,
it's,
you
I,
get one a little bit further out, and next thing you're thinking about the one that's out, and then you start telling yourself, it's like, don't miss, don't miss. So what are you telling yourself? Miss.
yeah, well,
Because your mind remembers the last thing. They don't remember the don't, it just remembers the miss.
the bad tear, my mind, the way it focuses and my eye. And if I put especially like they want to practice, do a practice end before we start. I belong to a club here in Kansas. It's the Salina Bowman Archery Club out of Salina. I mean, it's a pretty decent organization. We have a real good core group of guys. So in the wintertime, the club secretary and treasurer and Eric, he has a mechanic shop, and it's a pretty big concrete building, and it's heated. So in the wintertime, he allows the club to go inside, and we have a wall of targets that we shoot 3-spot on. So it keeps us all entertained, but you know, it is a bunch of guys. There's very few women want to shoot 3-spot, and there's very few actually around this area that really belong to the archery club. So tends to get, a little coarse in there. So
Yeah.
I I try to keep I try. I really do try. I do
Yeah.
try.
Yeah. That's all we can do, right?
My blood pressure, I don't need it, and I can tell it starts to rise. You're supposed to be having fun. And there's been times when you're struggling. Do you know what I'm saying with the struggle bus, when you just can't figure it out, and
Yeah.
you're like, why is it just not working? And then, it's like I've boxed my bow up before, and it's like, I'm just not having fun. This is just such negative training right now, and I have to put it away and just go a different route for the moment. Yeah. And I think that actually helped too, because sometimes when you're just not having fun, you start cursing the game, and it's always a simple solution. You just have to calm down for a minute and figure it out.
Well,
Arrows were a little off, or you were getting contact, or your knock fit. I mean, there's so many little things that can happen, that can
yeah.
affect your.
Yeah. And sometimes the best training is to stop shooting your bow,
Yeah.
or switch to, if you're shooting compound, switch to a recurve. Completely different. You shoot them differently and everything else. You don't use releases, and the back tension part of it's still basically the same. The slight variations because using your fingers. But sometimes I've talked, we've interviewed several people that they stepped away from it for 3 or 4 months, or even
I
6 months, and then they
I
come back and they were just, the problem was gone.
I picked up my hunting bow. It's a different bow, shorter to axle. And it was like, I just need to shoot this a little bit and just have the feel of a different bow in your hand. And also I do use, I'll say it, I'm a command shooter. I use a thumb button. Sometimes it just doesn't go off when I command it at the right time, but I I'm not going to admit that I'm a puncher or anything like that, even though I do a lot. But I have a hinge. I use True Ball releases. I'll put a plug for True Ball Excel. They certainly are a super company and have really treated me well over the last years. And when I start off, for the beginning of my indoor, I like to use my hinge a little bit. It's it's not set up for my bow. I have more let off on my bow. I don't have enough holding weight for the hinge to function properly. And that's why I have a little bit of a difficulty like I getting to the click on it. So I'll be like pulling, and it's like, why is it not getting there? And then finally it'll get to the click and my shot process is already broke down and I'm
Yeah.
tend just to jerk right through it. But I can it starts to humble me a little bit where it's like, okay, it's hard. This is a different game, and I don't give it enough. I don't give it enough time. I need to shoot it more. My son shoots a hinge really well. I know a lot of archers that shoot a hinge really well, but I like to thumb. I just like the thumb buttons. I like my True Ball Abyss. It's a really good release. I have the Fulcrum Flex, so it has the same feel in my hand, the same grip. But I don't know. It's like fly fishing compared to spin casting.
Oh yeah.
A different challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And like this is the first time I've done an interview like this. So it's a different challenge. So, like stepping out of your comfort zone and trying something, like a hinge or something, I definitely would recommend it. It's not for everybody, certainly.
Well,
You
definitely
know,
not beginners.
no,
Even the
no.
handheld's not good
No.
for beginners.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it be for beginners. I mean, I've personally witnessed my son give himself a couple of good back fists in his own chops with it, where
Yeah.
he was a little mad. One time I didn't realize that he had actually back fisted himself in the face and was bleeding pretty bad. And me and him, we were pretty competitive together because there was a minute where I could tell he was coming up fast with his accuracy, and he couldn't beat me though. I mean, I would still get him no matter what. At the end, I'd still have a few points, and I could tell that would really piss him off. But he had a open setup, and he was shooting I think it was like a True Fire Synapse or something like that, or it was what it was one of. It was one of the True Fire backed hinge style release of that at that time, and I had shot it into the 10 and I stepped off to the side, and it was the True Fire Seer, and it was his turn to shoot, and all of a sudden his arrow exploded into the trees, and I just kind of laughed. I was like, "That was awesome!" And I turned and I looked back over at him, and he was sitting there, and his lip was bleeding, and he was kind of spitting up blood a little bit out, and it probably wasn't the right time to be laughing at him, but it happened. It happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he has now certainly overtaken me, and now I'm the one to luckily beat him if I can. It's been a minute since Dad has been the better of the shots. So,
Yeah. I know I use a handheld. I have a Carter chocolate addiction that I use. And I took the knurled knob off because I don't need it. Because the way I do is I bury the trigger into the webbing part between my thumb and index finger and then hold it. And now then I can draw back and then use the back tension to pull it back. And I don't have to, I'm not pulling anything. If I really had to, just make a fist and it will fire it. But I use a really hard trigger. I want it as hard as I can because I want to be able to put some pressure on it and not have it go off. And that's, you just got to keep your finger off of it. I know with the wrist straps, I always put my finger behind the trigger as I'm drawing because you can't actually touch it. Because what'll happen a lot of times is you're drawing a bag fingers above it, you start drawing back a little tight, and your finger starts closing on it and pulls it. And had a friend of mine, he shot fingers for years, and then he got a new bow, and it just wasn't going to work for fingers. Want to shoot a release, and he called me one time. It's like, this release failed. No, Mike, it did not. It's a Scott release. They don't fail like that. You pulled the trigger. You had a finger in front of me, pulled the trigger. And he says, no, I didn't. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to go off accidentally. That, especially new ones, when you get quality releases, your Carters, your Stands, your True Balls, um, your Scott releases, they're all real good quality ones. And we actually interviewed guy from True Ball. He talked about a bunch of the releases and stuff, and it was kind of cool, how they do that, and it's really nice. You just get a quality release. That's
Yeah.
the difference between being able to have a good clean release as opposed to pulling a trigger. I was helping some ladies out at Nebraska has an event where he teaches lady archery and other outdoor events, and was trying to teach, put the finger on it and pull through, but the trigger travel was like a quarter of an inch on this cheap release, and you couldn't do it that way because you can't pull them back there. So she had to basically pull the trigger because the release wouldn't allow her to, have a good clean release. So you just kind of, and you see them for like 3 days sometimes. There's a 3 different sessions, or sometimes just one session. So you don't have time to go through, and you just get them interested and then work on it later.
I
But
still have my first release. It's hanging on the wall right back behind me. It was a True Fire release. And you remember the before the string D loops came out, there was an
yeah.
aluminum D loop
Oh
that you,
yeah.
and it was the exact shape. It fit the inside of the True Fire release. It was that True Fire aluminum D loop. Because before that, you were clipping it on the string.
Right. That was an improvement over clipping it on a string as far as arrow flight, but that extra weight of that
Yeah.
loop on there would start beating your cables up. You'd start seeing marks in your cables, and it'd start chewing up the jaws on a lot of your releases.
Yeah, that well, this my True Fire release, it was made to fit right in that. It was that exact shape. But it wasn't much longer after that is when they came out with those regular D loops.
Yeah,
And I was
those are much nicer.
oh yeah, I remember it was what like I said, I was like the guy with the first kid on the block with it. And when I showed up with that and those guys that were still clipping their releases on their strings, they're like, there's no way this is gonna work. It's been working ever since. It's crazy
And,
how that kind of technology has gone.
and you can prove that you get better arrow flight out of them. Um, it's a real simple technique. Put a pencil on a table and pretend like you're pulling back, you're hooking to the string. You're pushing at an angle on that arrow or the pencil, and then you push straight behind it. Which way does that arrow start off straight? Only when you push all the forces going straight behind. So that's what the loop does, is it puts the force of the string from the nock to the tip. If you use a loop, if you hook to the string underneath it, you're pulling back at an angle. So now that string is at an angle in the nock. And besides sending at an angle, it's also, I've seen them where they actually draw back as the bows got shorter, that arrow would pop off. You
Yep.
put enough force on it, pops off.
Yep. I'm not sure of what the exact terminology is, but Like that was one of the benefits to having a good bow tech. He could decipher my backwoods kind of description of my problem. But
Yeah.
we always tie a knot on the inside of our D loop to prevent the knock pinch, and so
And I never do, because I put both knots above and below the knock itself. Because if you put a a loop inside of there and a knot inside of there, now that string is not pulling directly behind your arrow. It's now up. It's up a little bit different of an angle. So your force is not directly in back of the knock. It's actually centered in between the distance between your knock and how big your loop is. So that's changed that off a little bit. So now that's going to make that arrow fly a little bit different. Now, can you set your bow up all goofy, completely out of tune? It'll shoot that same arrow in the same spot every time. It's just when you get multiple arrows or you put broadheads on them and everything else, you get into wind conditions and all that changes. So I always like the arrows to be, as best flight as I can.
yep, that certainly is a fact. I for the longest time, and a lot of my friends, they kind of questioned me, and I always used feather fletchings because I'm a 31-inch draw length, and trying to get arrows and stuff to weigh proper and have the proper front of center, and when you have a real long draw length, and it's hard, and they don't have the right point weight, and the front of center, and you're trying to get down to 360 or 370, 380 grains with an arrow, and you have a 29-inch arrow, and trying to have it all built properly with the right front of center is really, really difficult. So one of the things that I would do is I used to use a Gateway Razor little shield cut feather fletch, and I'd
Yeah.
have them four fletch them. And the smallest, lightest, the little QAD tuna knocks, they were like 4 grains, these tiny little mini knocks, and do everything I could to lighten up the back end so I could get more front of center. And I would even use 75 grain broadheads and points. I used those for a long time. I killed a lot of elk, a lot of deer with them. And it didn't really matter. I mean, they didn't have a lot of big diameter cutting broadheads back in the day. They only had like they were NAP, they were like new archery products. They were like the Thunderheads. They had Thunderheads, they had Muzzies, they had satellites. Uh,
There wasn't a lot of options back then, was there?
there weren't, and they were just starting to come out with a few more qualities broadheads. But I can remember if there's a company still out there now. It's called Vortex. It was a mechanical broadhead, and they were like shot like this ridiculous, like 3-inch cutting diameter and 2.5-inch cutting diameter. I bought them for turkey hunting out there, but they're still around. I saw a commercial for them not too long ago on one of the hunting channels.
Really good for turkey, because you got that big area, because you're shooting for the neck,
Yeah,
and that's such a small target. It's what, maybe inch and a half wide, on something that's moving. Yeah, if you can have a 6-inch wide broadhead flying at them, you're a little better chance of getting them. And I know a lot of them use mechanicals for turkeys, because if you have a miss, if you just barely scrape by, you're going to miss. If you get close enough to open that broadhead up, even the one leg of it, it's still going to do damage on that neck and take turkey out.
my personal favorite broadhead for turkeys, I would say that the Grim Reaper Whitetail Extremes. They're like 3 blade, 2.5 or and they're like 2 3/4. I mean, they're giant cutting diameter on them.
Yeah.
But I I'm not saying I am not a turkey head shooter. I've never successfully pulled it off. I've shot a lot of them in the body, and a friend of mine, he's like, man, I want to do that so bad. Those broadheads, those turkey broadheads, they're really expensive.
Yeah.
I think he paid like $60 and there was two of them in the package. And he goes, hey, I'll give you one of them. So I was like, I'll give it a shot. I can certainly do it. I'm accurate
Yeah.
enough. I got the decoy, I got the spot. And so I would always I would always buy two tags, but I didn't want to be greedy and shoot both turkeys the same day because then the hunting's over. So
Right.
I would buy two tags and I would shoot one turkey, say opening day, and then the next weekend I'd go and get another one. Or your tag would turn into a shotgun. You could use it during the shotgun season. So
Oh, that's
I
good.
would I would mix it up. I would, like I said, I would shoot opening day. I would shoot a turkey with my bow. And out here in Kansas, the Rios out here, they really, really react well to the decoy. I mean, that crawling in with behind the fan works really good. I mean, you got to be really quick with your shot. Maybe a recurve would work best with that. But my spot, I think it's a Mojo decoy, and I just call it Tommy Lee. But I put a real Jake fan in it, and I stick it out there, and it spins around. I have it on an arrow shaft that I stick in the ground. Turkey will come up and bump it. It'll spin around, and it really pisses them off real good, and it gets me a good shot. And yeah, I put it out there at like 10, 12 yards, 14 yards, something like that. But this one day, my buddy gave me that uh, head chopping. I think it was a Toxic brand, and I had gone down to our local archery shop and got a full length arrow because your draw length, it has to be out past the end of your
Right.
hand on your riser. So I got a full length arrow with 4-inch feather fletch on it so that I would have good control. It would have good control, and I pulled the greedy move, and I shot a turkey, and I went out, I grabbed them, I bring them back to the blind, and there's still birds gobbling. So I just kept calling, and I put that Toxic brand, and I'm sure that they work absolutely phenomenal. But my setup, which I later found out was not optimum for those head chopping, you want to have a lighter pound bow and be shooting like 55 pounds. 72 pounds is just too much for those due to the way that the blades direct how they fly.
Right.
I learned this. I learned it. And I never did find the arrow either. But these three Jakes come in, and the one lead Jake, he's got maybe a 6-inch beard, and he's gonna tough up, and he's gonna beat up my Mojo decoy. They are all in a line, and the line of them was stretched out there. The lead Jake that was beating up the decoy was probably about 5 feet away from the back Jake, and I put it right on that Jake's neck. But when he stretched out, and when I let that arrow go, it was kind of like my golf shot if I was at the driving range. It took such a hard hook to the left. It almost hit the back Jake in the head, and he was
Oh,
about 5 feet back. And it kind of ducked under it, and my arrow went somewhere out into the CRP, and those Jakes all took off out of there. But I later on talked with one of the TV personalities. I'll give him a plug. He's a super nice guy, Philip Vanderpool. And he's a frequent of Lincoln, Kansas, here to one of the local outfitters. And so does Team Elite. And being a guy who prefers elite archery, I have been invited a few times to go out and speak with Larry McCoy and from Elite's Respect the Game, and with Philip Vanderpool. And those guys, they're just a wealth of knowledge, and they're super humble. I mean, they'll both tell you, we're not better hunters than you. We just have a really good job. And, you know, they can give you some advice and sit there. And I mean, you just pick their brain. And he told me, it's like, well, you practice with those and with a pillow. For one, you can shoot with a practice shot and put a pillow out in your yard up against the target, some old pillow, and it won't destroy it. And you can at least see if you're going to hit close to where you're aiming. You want to
Yeah.
use a lighter poundage bow and really get them in close, inside 10 yards. You don't want to be shooting them out at 14 to 17 yards. It's a more of a close shot. So those were all the things that I had done wrong. So since then, I have gotten some new of those decap broadheads, and I haven't used one yet. So actually, to be 100% honest, in the last 2 years, I haven't even turkey hunted, and it was one of my most favorite things to do. I would turkey hunt religiously, and I would make sure to go out, be the first guy out there and roost them and have them fly down and do the whole thing. Such an awesome experience. And Kansas here, we've had such a decline in our turkey population in our area that I almost feel guilty going out and shooting one, because you're shooting the prime of the species, the breeding
Right.
males. You're not going out shooting the jakes and the young tender ones. And I've shot, man, I've shot upwards of 50 gobblers in my life. And I'm gonna be 100% honest, they're not the best piece of meat in the world. I mean, you make them into nuggets and stuff like that because they're generally a pretty tough bird. They're an 8-year-old wild bird. And I'm not saying I don't eat them. That's just my opinion. I would say that, at a wild game, I would say turkey would be the most overrated of them as far as the tenderness of it and stuff. And so I don't know. I'm not going to give up on turkey hunting. I plan on making a trip down to Florida this year and trying my luck getting an Osceola to complete my slam, and give some of our turkey population around here a rest. It has a lot to do here with our raccoon population.
Oh
It's
yeah.
roll, and there's nowhere to get rid of them. I mean, you have to throw them in a ditch. And being a hunter, I also have compassion for animals. I c- I just don't like the thought of, just shooting them with a 22 and throwing them in a ditch. Or I feel real bad just seeing animals hit by a car on the side of a road.
Yeah.
So just you know, I don't know, to recklessly just there needs to be something, go to sell for fur or something. I mean, I'm not against the fur trade, but to get 75 cents for a raccoon, I mean, it's the way the American economy is, with the price of fuel and the cost of every single thing. It's something that has to be done daily. So you have to take time and drive miles and trap lines, and to barely get $10 for your efforts, it's, I don't
And it
know,
just doesn't pay.
it's driven away the trappers, the people that would do it recreational. So I'm sure there's lots of people that are just trying to thin them out and just chucking them in a ditch. But I don't know, I just have a hard time doing that myself, being an animal lover.
Yeah, you kind of hate to waste them.
Yeah.
Although like coyotes and other critters are going to be eating on them anyway, but still that's we're not there to get food for the other critters. There's plenty of it out there. So,
And a little known fact, nothing will eat a coyote.
oh yeah.
Nothing. Yeah, I mean, you can throw out every single thing. The first thing they'll eat is a bobcat, because actually bobcat is just incredible table fare, actually. Um, but as far as like the coyotes and the skunk and the raccoon, if you put them all out, the next one that's going to be eaten is the coyote, or the raccoon will be eaten, then the possum, then they'll eat the skunk, but nothing will eat the coyotes. Nothing.
Huh.
Maybe a buzzard. A buzzard will eat a
Yeah.
coyote, and that's it. But
Yeah, wait for the bugs to eat them up.
yeah, yeah. So, but I don't know. I believe they need to be trimmed, and I will say I do shoot coyotes with every form of weapon available. If I'm out bird hunting with a shotgun and I see a coyote, it's now a coyote hunt, and I'm going to take a pop at it because they're definitely the apex predator around here,
Right.
thinning
You
out.
know, the same up here. There's quite a few of them. They eat a lot of, a lot of small deer and animals and eggs and whatever they can eat.
Yeah, yeah, and Kansas has new laws that they've just adopted their with thermals and stuff, and so but they have a season for it, and it was like their thermal hunting season. So I'm not sure if they've redone their game laws but they've noticed a decline in the turkeys, and they've eliminated like their fall hunting season. They eliminated the additional tag that you could buy in the spring. Now you can just one gobbler, which I'm good with that.
Yeah,
But
with the
I think
population being down.
they made it a lot more difficult for the out of state hunters. I believe I'm not sure if they have to maybe even draw to get a turkey tag right now. I'm not sure how that worked, but they've had some pretty new innovative laws to try to tame the turkey population, get it back up. But I don't know if it's going to happen if they don't do something about the predation. Maybe I mean they could offer the state could do something and offer a bounty on on the raccoons or something. I mean, some kind of a state program to boost it. I don't know. I really don't know.
Something anyway.
I put
If the raccoon hides aren't going for very much, then it's not profitable for trappers to get them. They're going to trap, something else that brings in more money. And
yeah, like bobcats. They they bring in good money. I still hear that you know that's like the optimum thing to catch. I guess I kind of drifted away from it when the price fell out of the bottom of it. Me and my friends, we used to have a trap line going, and it was like I said, it was something you had to run every day. And we'd catch coyotes and bobcats. I was a snare trapper. I thought it was kind of more. I'm not going to say challenging, but I could set snares wherever, see a little game trail where you could tell where the coons or the critters were traveling and pushing a trail through the tall grass, and you could set your snare up in the path of it. It was kind of, fishing for wildlife. I mean, it was they're pretty humane. I never really had anything still alive in the snare that you had to dispatch. So, because that's kind of a lot of people don't understand how that really works. When you have a critter in the, you know, they have to have a little club and you have to give them a little whack on the melon to
yeah,
put them down. But I don't know. I,
that's what you got to do.
yeah, I kind of drifted away from trapping. Like I said, it wasn't worth it. And archery takes up so much time that our ASA archery, I mean, it, I used to fish. I'm a pretty good fisherman. I grew up in South Florida for a minute and was a good saltwater fisherman and a good bass fisherman. But the way archery, if you want to be into a sport, I mean, you have to put some time in. There's a lot of people that just want to pull their bows out occasionally and wonder why they're not accurate. But you know,
Yeah,
there's just not time in the day. I mean, I'm a carpenter and 9 to 5 job, and then you still have to find time to do everything else and do a 3D shoot or two on the weekend, and then there's no more time to fish, and you got to go back to work on Monday. You don't have
yeah,
to work because it's raining, but you can't fish because it's raining. So
yeah. What do you do?
yeah, you go in your shop and you mess around with your bow.
Yeah, if you can't work because you're working outside in the rain, you can't go fishing in the rain. Well, you could, but not very wise sometimes. Be out there while it's raining.
But I can honestly say the best people are, fishermen. When you're, I mean, I've been on a lot of fishing boats. Everybody on the boat, regardless of their walk of life, whether they're a doctor or a carpenter or they're a warehouse worker, when you're on that boat, you're all fishermen, and
Right.
that's it's just a great atmosphere. It's the same with archery. Excuse me. We really love the archery because of the archery family that you meet and the quality of the people. You rarely get judged for anything, I mean, if you're having a rough weekend, people aren't just down on you because they understand everybody has a rough weekend.
Right.
Uh, you pretty much you root for everybody to do good, and you travel around, you meet people. We've developed friends that are all across the whole country, and living here in Kansas, we've met people that live in Missouri and Minnesota, Arizona, New Mexico. All we're from Southwest Colorado. That's if I could put a plug in for those boys, the guys and gals that run the Bow Up 3D shoot. I mean, if people want to go to a quality, 100% family oriented, best, I mean, right up with St. Jude's, this benefit goes to cancer patients. And it's an actual national fundraiser now. They have a website. It's Bow Up for 3D. And it started out, my son, he was on one time on a traveling baseball team, and his coach and his other teammates, they had a family that just lived right around in their area and went to church with them, who their son developed some form of cancer. So they just thought it to be a real nice idea to have this little 3D shoot in our backyard, and we'll invite all of our friends and we'll do a little pot and we'll donate the money to the family for their cancer bills. Well, it started out as a little 30-person get together, and now there's nearly 500 people attending this shoot.
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty impressive. I mean, the donations that come in, the raffles, the deer hunts, the elk hunts, everything that you can win. And they all the money goes to the proceeds. All the proceeds go to the families. And you can if you have a family member or somebody else has a family member that is suffering from the costs of cancer, they can put their name in the hat. There's no longer just a local thing. It's now a national charity, and you can put in a bid for some of this money to benefit your family or friends. It's really it's something I would suggest if you're in that area, if you're in the Southwest or you're not far away. People travel from across the nation now to go to this, and it's top notch. It's run phenomenal. The people they're just good. They're just good people. It's just good to be around.
Yeah, I brought up their website. Let's see. Uh, That's their website, right?
Yeah, that's their
Yeah.
website.
Yeah. So I thought I'd bring it up since that we're talking about it, and there's a lot of information. Here's some scores, their mission statement. Um, Up helps family individuals struggle with medical debt and medical related expenses by putting on a high quality archery competition. So let's see if we got some 2024 scores. And then they list out all the different divisions and scores.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
and I'll be honest, my score will not appear on there, and I'll elaborate a little bit because this is my favorite shoot. I did shoot in the team shoot. There's a shop shoot that, and this is a phenomenal part of this shoot. Right before the night before, on the Friday night before, they have a shop shoot. And if you're a member of a shop, you have a shop, you know someone that has a shop, it's a 3 member team. Your shop just has to donate something to the auction or the raffle. They don't really auction very much off. It's mostly a raffle. And all those proceeds go to the family members that are in need. But for the shop shoot, they have these beautiful trophy buckles and this really cool trophy that goes back to the shop.
Oh,
And
cool.
we have gone out there 2 years and competed in that shop. We've been out there several years, but we have only competed in that shop shoot 2 years. And this year, before we went, we were, I mean, you feel like you can never get in enough. But we had a local archery shoot here, and me and my son attended it. And someone at the shoot, one of our buddies that he was shooting with, just glanced off my son's arrow nock,
Oh,
right, and hit his nock. And I mean, it was a error on his fault. He didn't look at his nock well enough and notice that it was bad. And
oh
when he
yeah.
walked up to your next stake to shoot, he was using the same arrow over and over. And he shoots. My son shoots a Bowtech. I shoot a elite. He shoots a Bowtech Reckoning, and I shoot an elite Verdict. And he went to shoot his next target, and everyone described it as the sound like he dry fired. Well, his arrow
Oh,
went off, flinging off to the left. And when we got back to the house, he knew that there was a little something off, and he kind of tried to retune. I mean, he had like a 3-inch paper tear. He's like, "Whoa, Dad, there's
oh,
something really off with what's going on here." And what he did was, we have a press and stuff, and he took the string off and started getting into looking at his bow, and I think it was like the bottom cam, the axle and the mod and everything. The whole thing is a one-piece system, and it had all kinds of slop. And we were all actually, he discovered that when we were out in New Mexico. He had got it all tuned, and we went out to New Mexico. We went to the shop shoot. He was just crazy all over the board. And while we were back at the house we were staying at, we noticed that his bottom cam was crazy. It had all kinds of slop, and it was moving around. Well, I shoot in the open class, and I'm not quite this year. I'm old enough to shoot in the senior class out there, but I've been protesting that since I turned 50, because everywhere else I qualify as a senior. So all those youngsters out there, all these 18, 19-year-olds are just whooping my butt. And I knew I'd be outgunned, but I'm a better judger than most of those guys were. So this year I was going to make the shoot off. I'm like, I'm going to make the shoot. I'm going to be in. I'm going to finally make the shoot off. And I noticed that his bow was disabled. Well, he shoots in the pro class in that shoot, had paid far more money to shoot in that class than I did. So elites are really, really easy to tune and set up. And we quickly made a few adjustments, and we put his sight on my bow, and we had him shooting my bow in no time. And I kind of just sat aside for that one. And that's why I didn't put up a score. So I just kind of socialized. My son, he probably didn't have the best round of his life, but he did shoot it anyway. I mean, yeah. he didn't waste his entry fee.
Yeah.
So, but we'll be back this coming year, and I got my verdict back from him, and it's shooting incredibly well. I mean, I can't wait to get back out there again. It's certainly one of the best shoots that we anticipate going to every year.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time. And they the senior division 55 and over, I blew that away a long time ago.
Well, there's something
So
to be said about shooting with your own age group or even
right.
close to it, because we you know, there got to be that point where I couldn't beat those guys anymore. And I'm just out there to donate my money. And but with that being said, I mean, I shoot a fairly decent round of archery. I mean, I'm not the best, but I'm not the worst by no means.
Right.
I don't go out there for the podium wins, because if I did, I wouldn't go very often, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I understand that. I know where I'm at in my game, you know. My eyes are failing me, and everything else, so I have to keep upping my game and upping my equipment, and and I'm grateful that I'm now shooting against, like in ASA archery, they place you with all guys your same age, so,
Yeah.
or within a real close bracket of being in your same age. So,
Well,
you know,
and as we get older, we have other problems to deal. I've got cataract from my right eye, which means my right eye is blurry, my left eye is clear. So I have to make sure I don't let my left eye see the pins, because when I do, then my left eye picks up the pins, and I'm way off. And I don't shoot those long range shots too much anymore, because yeah, not only is the pin blurry, but the target's blurry. So I got two
yeah,
blurry things I'm trying to line up, and it just
yeah,
doesn't work. So I try
a
to keep them.
clarifier and a verifier only do one at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only do one thing, and even with the glasses on there, it's still not going to be clear,
Well,
like it should be. So
being an aging archer, I mean, like my hunting bow is a 70-pound bow. I shoot the Elite Ethos. It's a it's a 70-pound bow. It's smooth. I mean, my target bow is a 60-pound bow, my verdict. And I have the smooth mods on it too. So it's even smoother than smooth. I mean, it just draws back like butter.
oh yeah.
So I noticed when I pull back that ethos, but for sure. But what I noticed the most is like during the archery shoots that are greater than 20 targets, when they start getting the 30 and 40 target, my eyes start to weaken a little bit, staring through that peep sight, trying to aim real. And I'm right eye dominant. I'm right handed, but I find myself having to squint my left eye a little bit more and more and more to keep the focus on my right eye. Because I've noticed that before, where they say you're supposed to shoot with both eyes open. That I can't say that that's 100% truthful, because my son, he he is a pretty savvy archer, and he's left eye dominant and right hand. And you'll have to be on top of your game to beat him. I mean, you're definitely going to have to be a good archer to beat him and outshoot him. So to say he's doing it wrong, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a stretch. I mean, it's like, well, you're going to have to prove to me how it's wrong, because he is better than most around here. So, it's whatever I think you need to do to get it dialed in, aside from doing crazy stuff like shooting a left-handed bow right-handed and stuff like that. I mean, wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah. They don't fit in your hand very well.
Yeah, man, it'll probably blow up in front of everybody after you tell them I don't recommend that.
Well,
So
generally you're going to shoot whatever your dominant eye is, but I run into cases where there was some physical reason why you couldn't. So you have to work around something else. And I
You
know
have a
I hunt
blind,
with both eyes open, but I close my left eye when I do targets.
that little blinder that you can put on the side of your,
Yeah,
you ever use that? Do you use that?
I don't, because when I'm hunting, I'm always off to the side anyway. And I found by accident, because um, I didn't realize my right eye was blurrier than my left eye, because I see two sets of pins anyway. So my mind always picks up the clear set of pins and ignores the other one. So I don't even notice the dim set of pins. Well, right eye is blurry pins. My mind picks up the left eye, which is the clear pins. And I shot a deer, and I know that pin was right behind that front shoulder. Well, I caught an artery right in front of the back hip. I still got the deer, but I'm off, at, it was probably 15 yard shot from the behind the front shoulder, the back shoulder. So I went down to the range, and target first thing is close my left eye when I'm shooting, right on. Open up both eyes. I was shooting at the top right on a 5 spot. I missed the target to the left with both eyes open. So now I'm trying to do one of those things where I'm just blinking my eye to force it. Then I had a hooded sweatshirt on when I was hunting. I turned my head, the hood blocked my left eye. Problem solved. I just have to wear a hooded sweatshirt when I'm shooting, because it blocks my left eye. Then I still have both eyes open to, catch other stuff out there, but it blocks just enough to miss the pin. And I know my son, when he's shooting trap, he'd see both pins. So on the front of the shotgun, I put one of those little brackets on the side that would block, so his left eye couldn't see the pin. And I grabbed a shotgun and shooting this. Everything's all blurry. So I can't shoot it very well because everything's blurry.
Yeah, yeah. I uh I understand. I have to wear reading glasses now. I have some kind of astigmatism, they said, on my eye, and but you know, without reading glasses, I am kind of
Yeah.
screwed over. I've learned I can use the screen on my phone. My camera works as reading glasses. For anybody that forgot their reading glasses, you can zoom in with your camera on your phone
Oh
and read
yeah.
what.
Yeah, you have a magnifying glass, and I've used the camera, something I can't see, put the camera in there, take a picture, and okay, now it is, as I can't
Yeah,
read it, and I can blow it up, and I can
yeah,
see angles that I can't see with my head, because can't get my head in there, and if I can fit the camera in there, and a lot of things. Yeah, I know it's kind of weird. Um, these are bifocals for reading. The top lens is for um, like the computer, and the other one's for reading, but it's hard. I can almost see better. But then I have my regular glasses that are bifocals. Yeah.
yeah.
So
My
I have like four different visions that I need to do everything, because in order to look on the computer, I'd be like this all day long, because I have to look to the bottom part of the lens, and when you're trying to read or see anything close, I'm up like, got my head tilted way up, and it's like, so I just got another set of glasses that bifocals, and then last time I got glasses that look identical to these, and one's just a single vision for the computer, and the other one's the bifocal. So sometimes I have to, okay, which one I have on? But those glasses are ordered. I keep these here. These are older prescription, but works fine. So because everything's kind of blurry, and I was like, okay, why is it out of focus? Oh, I don't have my glasses on. But up close, I see better without my glasses. But then everything is all messed up, and I'm not seeing out of the right eye, so a lot of times I close the right eye when I'm trying to read something up close, because it's actually more clear. So all kinds of problems as we get older, and that's what's nice about, I'm in the same age bracket as other archers with the same type of problems, so we kind of evens it out. Hey, as long as we can shoot our bow.
yeah, yeah. This year, last year, I had a real bad elbow. Come to find out, I have some bone spurs and a little bit of arthritis in my right elbow, and along with some tendonitis. And for the most part of the year, the spring, I couldn't shoot my bow. I couldn't draw it back. I mean, it just hurt so darn bad. I mean, a lot of times just moving my arm in a direction. And then my gosh, I ended up having to go get a shot down at the orthopedic surgeon. They gave me a cortisone or steroid shot. They gave me some kind of magical solution that they put in my elbow, and it lubed it back up, and I was able to
Oh,
finish
that's
off
good.
the season. But I decided that I was going to switch to the dark side, and I started using a rangefinder. So shooting in the senior men's open, I in ASA, I figured, well, I'll just change my class. No problem. Me and my son were on our way to an ASA pro-am shoot, and I think it was in like London, Kentucky, and we're on our way down there. And he's like, well, you can just do it over your phone, Dad, on this app. And I'm looking at it, and I couldn't figure it out. It kept telling me I had to join these other classes that I wasn't really interested in. And when I get there, they tell me, nope, nope, senior men, you have to move laterally, and laterally is the senior known 50. So it's a known yardage class, but you can shoot out to 50 yards instead of 45 yards. Well, I didn't think that would be that big of a deal. But having not shot all year in really dark conditions, and I was having a real hard time with my bow too. I was struggling to keep it in tune. You know, that's another whole nother story, messing around with that.
Yeah.
I ended up having to shoot the open class, or the known class, all last year. And this year I switched back to the open class again. I'm going to move back over. But past weekend, we had a little club competition, and it was all unknown yardage. And it felt really good to get out there and judge well. You know, the judging it's an art in itself. And you know, that was pretty good. I judged well, shot well. My bow was working for me. Had a couple of poor shots, but as we all do occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have some. I I know when I shot my first 3D, I had like 6 arrows, I think, with me, because that's all my quiver would hold. I had a hip quiver, and I think that's all I had in it, 6 arrows or something like that. And I'm down 2 targets and down an arrow already, and I'm hoping to get through the whole 40 targets and still have an arrow left. That's how I started out. And then you finally get where, okay, I have the same arrow. I get to shoot all of them. You haven't lost any. Then that's the next step. And then you go in, it's like, okay, now you can go, and now you're worried about trying to get, the better scores. And, I always wanted to average an 8 is what I wanted to average on the 40 targets. Because that meant a kill shot on all the animals. And, you drop a couple fives, and it gets kind of tough to do that, because 1 5, you got to get 3 10s to make up for it. Keep
There,
your average up.
there was a archery competition here in Kansas for the longest time, and it was known as the toughest competition in Kansas, and it was called the No Bull. And it was legitimately the toughest archery competition in Kansas. They used everything that they could do to deceive you. They'd put small targets, big targets, change the ranges real quick. Big targets out, way out, small targets out. Then they'd move them up close. They'd have them over water, over air gaps from one hill to the next. And they just made it absolutely super hard. So one of my first goals with this No Bull is just wanted to come back with all my arrows, because
Yeah.
the first time I showed up there, and some of the guys I'm still shooting around, they can remember the first time I showed up and I had 3 arrows, and they're like, really? And I made it. I got through it. I had 1 arrow when I got back to the end. I missed a few targets, but I found it, and I got back to the end, and I had 1 arrow when I finished it. I pulled it off.
That's pretty good for that tough of one to only lose 2 arrows.
Yeah, where I probably should have had a whole quiver full of arrows. And nowadays I carry around 6 arrows, but if I lose, you reach that point when in your confidence level as an archer that if you even miss one inside of 50 yards, you're just kind of like at a loss, like, how did I even do that?
Yeah.
What happened here? And I'm not going to say that I never miss, but I mean, I like to say that they've come a lot fewer and far between than when I was younger. And it's a good thing the way that things cost these days. I mean, that's, the confidence in your equipment is a lot.
Oh yeah.
You have to know that I mean, you have to know that you have good equipment so that you can say that it wasn't, I'm not using some plastic release and the cheapest Walmart arrows that are uncut. And, I mean, you have to eliminate all the excuses. And, the companies that I've supported and have supported me in the past, I mean, I can honestly say that their products are not free. They are
No.
meant to last, though. I mean, you can buy that site, and then, yeah, that site. I mean, I don't even want to say how much my site costs, because some people would be like, that's stupid. But I can say that it's the last site I have to buy. It's not going to go bad. It's made so
Right.
well. And that's why they have to charge you that price, because their equipment, their machine, and most people don't know too that, like, Shrewd Archery, they're one of the finest companies out there. They make some phenomenal products. I use a lot of them. They're just a small machine shop, and the archery side is just one side of it. I mean, they're a machine shop. They have a main income in bringing money in. I mean, True Ball is not some gigantic overseas company that's just pumping out thousands of releases. It's they're smaller businesses, and I think that's pretty good people to do business with, because the company, I mean, there's a lot of small string manufacturers, but the guys that take care of me and my son and all the archers in this area, his name is Nick Dawa from Unbound Archery Bowstrings. And the fact that these companies recognize the little guy. I'm just a carpenter that has an archery addiction in Kansas, and I
Yeah.
really like to enjoy myself. The best part is I get to shoot with my son. So the fact that these people, they'll take their product and they'll give you, I mean, small discount, I mean, anything that they give you is so appreciated. I've been a carpenter most of my life, and I've used DeWalt tools. I've used Bosch. I've used, you name it. I've used every tool, Pazload, Hitachi. These companies have never offered me nothing, not a discount, not a break. I mean, I mean, if your tool breaks, they fight you to tooth and nail to replace any of it. You got to
Yeah.
save the original packaging and the receipt from 1995. Like, who does that? You know what I mean? And that's how all those main box companies. But here in archery, you know, they're super friendly. I mean, they want you to use their product. They want you to speak good of their product. They want you to further the brand. I mean, the level of treatment that Elite Archery has given me, those guys are the finest people to deal with. I deal with Darren Christianberry because he's my age. I mean, I communicate well with him. Super nice guy. Anybody that needs information, they can call him, or not necessarily call him, but message him or contact him on Facebook or Instagram, and he will reply. I mean, he'll answer you. And Nathan Brooks, I mean, Curtis Broadnax, those guys, they will reply to you and give you the information. There's a lot of people that will, a lot of pros, but I'm just speaking from my personal experience with
Right.
Elite, because my son, he shoots Bowtech. He speaks with Paige Pierce on a regular basis and asks her some of the most technical questions on how to fix this and and she is hands down one of the finest archers in the world, man or woman. And they're so willing to give you the information that you're asking for. I mean, if you're just asking stupid stuff,
Well, yeah.
I mean, at least come across with an educated question. I mean, if you're just trying to waste their time, I mean, you're probably not going to get a good result out of it. I mean, as you wouldn't for most people, but from what I have experienced, they're some of the finest people to deal with. And I recently got to shoot with Tim Gillingham, and it was like one of my most craziest archery experiences in my life. I was almost like a little kid being a groupie, and I was riding the struggle bus so hard too, and my bow was not performing right, and it was the worst time to have to shoot with Tim Gillingham. I'm like, why, why? I shot him with him at a team event at an ASA Pro-Am, and I did have a couple of shots, but I basically got carried on the team. I didn't perform well, and like I said, I to finally get to shoot with somebody like Tim Gillingham, and he's your pro on your team, and then just be struggling like none other. It was quite the experience, to say the least. But we did win the team event. We took first place, but he's a phenomenal archer. I mean, the people don't even realize the level of skill that goes into it. I mean, he's looking at, look down range and look and see a spot the size of a quarter at 45 and 50 yards and just put his arrow in the dead center of it and say, I'm going to shoot at the upper. It's not a fluke. I mean, when you look and you go, I'm going to shoot at that particular spot, and you just put your arrow right in the set. I mean, those guys are amazing. They're absolutely amazing. All the pro archers on the ASA Pro Tour. I mean, their level of accuracy is incredible. And for them not to be a member of the Olympics, because compound archery is nationwide, and
Right.
that's I'll say that, when they have like power walking, and this year they had break dancing, now they're
Oh,
going to have
yeah. That's kind of
football. Yeah,
stupid.
and so I'm I'm sorry, but I'm an archer, and I feel that, you know we took a raw deal on that, because you took a precision sport and you swept it aside over uh, I don't know. It's just my opinion. I mean, some people out there might think that breakdancing and power walking is a far more exciting sport than men's, women.
Breakdancing is a thug having a spasm.
I know, and I mean, I remember when it was a thing. I was 14 years old. We're talking 1984, and that's when breakdancing was like popular. So for them to like broom aside, I mean, there's a ton of international archers. I mean, it's not like this is a sport that's, singled out to America. I mean, there's a ton of international archers that could have represented every country. So
Yeah, and I've talked to, nice thing about doing this podcast, I talk to archers all over the world, and it's all basically, the same. If you have a bow in your hand and you're an archer, you have a friend you can go up and talk to. If you don't have a bow, and you see someone carrying a bow, go and talk to them, because you're gonna have something to talk about, and who knows, might be your next best friend.
yeah,
You just met
yeah.
them.
Well, we I can honestly say, me and my son, we're fairly outgoing people. I mean, some people, I like to talk to people. I mean, I can, you bring up a subject, I'm not going to say that I'm super versed on everything, but we do travel around a little bit, so I get to try other cultures and just basic different states and how they're doing it. And you talk to pretty much everybody, and they have the same opinion and stuff, that it is in Arizona, or the matter what the media tells you, how a lot of people don't think the same. And I mean, when you get us all together, I mean, everybody, we all have the same ideologies. We're all pretty much thinking the same.
Yeah.
Or news broadcast media, they don't always give it the right story. I mean, I talk to, like I said, I'll talk to anybody. It doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, and everybody we all have the same ideologies. I mean, I know there are the radicals on each side, but majority of us,
They're minority.
yeah, they certainly are. They certainly
Yeah,
are. And you wonder how. I don't wonder. I mean, the media locomotive is what's forcing stuff down people's throat, telling everybody
right.
like this. But traveling around, and you find out that they're not all thinking like that, and we're all thinking relatively the same way. So I'm not going crazy.
Yeah, we kind of think like, am I going crazy? Is everybody think that? Is like, and then you talk to somebody, and then no, 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 like they're all nuts, and it's like, yeah, well, the news isn't to report news; it's to uh, instill opinions.
Spread propaganda too. I mean, and
Yeah,
I will say it happens on both sides. I have to only take the news with a certain dose. I'm glad there's sports, because when there's all these people and they're trying to, we want to boycott this and we want to, and we're not watching football. No, it's like, man, you can't take everything away from me, man. I
no,
gotta at least be able to like get away from the news and all the propaganda, and at least watch a baseball game or watch a football game, or I mean, put on golf and take a long nap. I mean, I'm good with that too.
yeah,
But
that would put you to sleep
yeah,
watching it.
it's one of those things where I have to take it in doses. You can tell when it starts to aggravate. You just tend to be more angry and stuff, and I like to be more of a happy person myself, and so getting out and you know, hey, there's one thing that I just thought of that is one thing that just irks the heck out of me with archery
Yeah,
and the media and the people not telling the truth is when people tell other people that your arrow has to be the same as your draw length.
no.
That is one of the, and when it's like you just want to just reach through the dang Facebook line and just choke this person that's telling the other guy,
It
yeah,
doesn't
whatever
have
your
to. It
draw length.
depends on,
And then when
what
you
you're
try
measuring for
to
your draw
enlighten them,
length.
you tell them, no, this is not how it's supposed to be. Your arrow's got to weigh inside this parameter, and your spine and then they tell you that you're just this crazy old man and you don't know what you're doing. It's like, holy cow. But that is 100% false. Anyone listening to this, your draw length has nothing to do with the length of your arrow. Please believe me.
Now, you don't want your arrow to be too short because then it won't fit on your rest.
The
Then you
only
have to
thing
go to an
draw
overdraw,
has
which
to do
we
with
used to
your
do.
arrow is the spine.
Right.
The poundage of your bow and your draw length determines the spine of your arrow,
Yeah.
and that is it.
Now, I like to set the arrow so that it's as your full draw, the front of the arrow is in front of your hand. Uh, Now, if the biscuit, it's not quite so bad. It's just got to be in front of the biscuit. Um, but I actually seen a guy had a broadhead on, drew back, it fell off the rest. He didn't realize it until he pulled the trigger, and on his hand, between his thumb and index finger, is a three-sided cut. He shot the arrow through his hand. He didn't know it, and that's why I tell us, like, with we'd have the little two prongs or whatever, type of rest. Um, I always tell them, what happens if the arrow falls off and it's on your hand and it's stuck? You can't pull back anymore. It's on there. How do you get it off your hand? Because that point sticking in your hand, how do you do that without pulling the trigger? How long can you hold it until you get it off? So I was
That's
like, in front of your hand. So worst case, you can let down, because you can't let it down if it's on your hand, because you're going to go through your hand. So you got to get it off your hand. And if it's in front of it, then all you got to do is just let down.
if you're wearing a
So,
head net, you can't grab onto the vein and with your mouth and lift it back
right,
on the breast. Not that
right.
I've ever done that or anything.
Yeah, it's always have them in front of your hand, and your draw length on your you measure your draw length in your physical body, and a draw length is normally measured on your bow where your grip is an inch and three quarters in front of that, which puts it right about where I cut the arrows anyway. So generally, your draw length is going to equal your arrow length. Generally, it doesn't mean anything if it's not. It's just what do you want? Like you said, you're shooting those big blades out there. You got to have a longer arrow because you want them in front of your hand, not that close to your hand. Because if you have gloves on, now then you're hitting the arrow and you want a little gap. So you're going to be a little different. We used to put overdraws on to get more speed out of the bows, which meant the arrow was actually behind your hand.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had
And
one 2-inch overdraw on my XI bow.
yeah, my first PSE had an overdraw on it. That was just a rest, and it put it back to get a little more speed. And now with the bows that are faster and faster and faster, there's no reason to put an overdraw on it. In fact, a lot of them you
They're
couldn't put an
going
overdraw
back
on
to
it
it.
if you put an overdraw on a lot of them because the um, the brace height is so small, you'd be smacking in the back of that overdraw.
Well, it's
Um,
starting to become more and more popular on some of the hunting bows for the guys
oh
that
yeah,
have the longer draw length
oh
because
yeah,
it's really hard to get an arrow that's light enough to even get some of the benefit out of the bow. If you have to have a 440 grain arrow because that's the lightest that you can make it before I mean you can only make your arrow so light if you don't have a selection, and the average arrows now are like 9.8 grains per inch. So
yeah,
when you're trying to hit a specific number and trying to get your arrow to be at a specific speed, it's really difficult for the guys with the longer draw lengths.
yeah,
We you we have the problem that we're not wanting to add length to our arrow, we're wanting to decrease it by 10 grains or 20 grains. And then there's the people that want to use the lighted nocks, and those are really heavy. Those are like 22 grains for a lighted
right.
nock. So the front
But
weight, I mean, that's something a lot of people don't realize too, is that when you add that heavy lighted nock, you have to have the equal amount added to the front to keep your front of center proper.
right.
Over just your regular hunting arrow and you put a lighted nock in it, it's going to change that front of center dramatically. You might get a
Well,
little bit of whirly bird in your back
yeah.
end.
Well, and as you make the arrow longer, the spine gets weaker because it's longer. So shortening the arrow stiffens the spine up. And sometimes you're shooting, like you are 70, 72 pounds, and you have a really long arrow, you got to try and find something to spine for that. And a lot of them a lot of the arrow manufacturers don't make too much of those really long ones that take that 70 pounds. You're kind of limited what you can get, but if you shorten the arrow, now you're into a little more options on your arrows.
And you're really striking a chord with me because that's one of the things that I'm getting ready to build a new set of arrows. And my brain is telling me, because my bow will shoot that ethos, I think it shoots like 349 feet a second or something that like
Yeah,
that full 31-inch draw with a 356 grain arrow, something like that. Is almost, well, I was like, wow, I need to do that. I need to get my bow shooting as fast as it can. I want it to be on the edge like a Corvette with no governor. I just speed. Well, I've been fighting this really, really, really vicious right hand tear with these arrows I've been using out of it because there's some Black Eagle arrows. And I'm not saying Black Eagle arrows aren't good arrows, but it kept giving me this real bad right hand tear, and I just can't work the tear out. So we're taking the whole bow apart and we're shifting the shims, and I'm moving everything around, and now I'm not on center anymore. And my stabilizer, my rest, everything's kind of cocked. And I mean, I like everything to be lined right down the middle.
right.
If something's wrong in my eyes, I mean, I'm a carpenter. I mean, I work on level straight lines, and it's an equation, and this is how it's supposed to be. So when something isn't lined up and it's not right, like in my brain, hey, something's not right, and this is never going to be right. So anything that goes wrong during your shot, it's because this isn't right,
Right.
which isn't 100% true. You can have a bow that that's a little off and it'd be accurate. But not too long ago, just recently, I saw a post from Nathan Brooks. He was commenting on someone that was shooting their ethos. Maybe it was their other bow, and the guy asked about arrows, and Nathan Brooks made the comment that I like to shoot a 250 spine arrow out of this bow at this draw length and that poundage. It just gives me better arrow performance and I get better tune. And I was like, David, have you been fighting this right hand tear because those 300 spine arrows you're shooting just aren't quite enough spine at 28 3/4 inch? So I'm thinking, because I'm getting ready to buy these new hunting arrows, and I'm just going to buy myself a heavier spine and just see if they kind of just tune a little bit easier for me. So,
Yeah, I've seen that a few times where a heavier spine arrow still flies really good. A
yeah.
weaker one, not, but an overspined one works just fine. So
And I'll just go
anyway,
one size up on the spine,
yeah, yeah. You
just
don't have to
because
go
I think
crazy.
it'll kind of stiffen it up that little bit, and maybe that'll give me that better tear that I'm looking for.
Well,
But
we're about an hour and 45 minutes, so um, we need to give your parting thoughts. I do have another appointment here in another 13 minutes, so I don't want to miss that one.
I don't
So
blame.
what would you advise archers to do? Give them, a couple of minutes of uh, what would your advice be?
For a first time archer,
Yeah,
a new archer, I
yeah,
would
first time.
suggest that you get a good quality release and buy some decent arrows and make sure that they're built proper, just not pulled out of the box, shove the inserts in. The arrows are very important to how the whole operation works, and a lot of people underestimate that. They feel as if they're not very good. They shouldn't spend the money. Sometimes it's exactly opposite. You should maybe just get 6 good arrows instead of the 12 cheap arrows. Um, Take your time sighting it in. It's the sight in is everything. You gotta have good arrows. You get your left and right. Work on each spot. Be diligent. Once your bow is sighted in, it should be just incredibly accurate and in your
Yeah.
hands. I mean, bows are set up individual. I would suggest any new archer does not pull their bow back with their fingers with a no arrow in it. I would
Oh,
seen a lot of
definitely.
that back turn out real bad for people, even that were really, really veteran archers where they knew better than to do that. And
Well,
always pay attention. I have shot literally tens of thousands of arrows through my bow, and I dry fired my bow right in front of my son and someone else holding an umbrella, spotting the target. I did not load an arrow onto my bow. I was so intent on making a good shot and looking at where I'm supposed to aim. I
forgot
I
to load
get
the arrow.
yeah, got to put an arrow on, and I've seen lots of other people do it. So
Yeah,
pay attention, and I'd like to say God bless America.
yeah, yeah. You and everybody else. Yeah, it's definitely something you got to consider when you're going in there. Make sure you get good arrows and get them set up. Just go to a professional to get it done. Um, don't cheap on the bow. But spending
Yeah,
money, like you said, on a release. So I think a release is the number one important thing that you spend money on.
there's
If you
nothing
go to a
wrong with
pawn shop, spend
oh,
$100 on a bow, spend $100 on a release, you're gonna have better setup than spending 500 on a bow and $50 or $20 on a release. So
There's lots of used quality bows out there. The more modern bows are adjustable without a bow press.
yeah,
Where the older bows, that's a mistake. A lot of archers, they buy an old bow because they got a good deal, and then they find out that they can't even adjust this bow, and they can't no longer buy parts for it. That's
yeah,
something a lot of beginner archers make, is not having the proper setup, the garage sale deals. So I'd kind of watch out for that.
yeah.
I would certainly watch out for that.
Well, any new archers, there's a lot of things that you can do to help out. One thing, the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group is a good place to join that group, because we got a lot of archers in there that have all kinds of knowledge. So get in there and ask questions. If you're struggling with something, take a video on your phone and upload the video from your phone and say, hey, what's going on? We'd be glad to answer. Uh, you can watch this podcast out there as well as you can go to my YouTube channel and learn to fix it yourself. The video will be posted there as well. And you can listen to the audio portion of this on Spotify or any place else where they do the podcast, as well as you can go out to audible.com and you can listen to it there for free. You don't have to pay to download anything. It's free. So if you have any questions, get a hold of me. Um, we'll answer any questions you have. And if I don't know the answer, well, then we'll find somebody that does. And I'll put links in the description of some things we talked about, just make it easier to find them. And stay tuned for the next one. We have another one coming up. I'm going to be talking with another archer here for the next podcast, and we'll enjoy talking to you guys, and hope you learned something for today. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for being on the show, Dave.
Thank you. Thanks much for having me. I enjoyed it.
My name is Roy Canterbury. I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101, and we'll see you on the next one.